Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. My name is Qiujie Shi, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar, in which we will be discussing the launch of the PEAK Synthesis Report, focusing on urban China in the new era of high-quality development. The webinar is a direct offshoot of the Shaping Urban Future MOOC, and we are really excited today to have among our audience many of the learners on the course. For those of you who find today's conversation interesting, we encourage you to check and experience the learning journey on the Shaping Urban Future course on Coursera and edX, and we are sharing a link to the course in the chat box, which should be coming out now. And for before we start today's actual talk and conversation, I would like to share some housekeeping rules. We're very keen to receive your questions, and please drop them in the chat box, the Q&A one at the bottom of the screen. We'll try our best to address all of them, but we may run out of the time, so we'll do as many as we can. Today's session is recorded and will be made available on the Shaping Urban Futures course on Coursera and edX and on other platforms. The session overall will be about 90 minutes. So for the first 15 minutes or so, I will give you a brief introduction of the PEAK project, the work that Peking University has done in its PEAK project, and an introduction of the synthesis report that we are going to discuss with our panelists today. So after that, we have a discussion among the panelists for about 40 minutes or so, after which we will have plenty of time for Q&A, which should be about 30 to 35 minutes. Our panelists today are two PEAK researchers who have undertaken work in China and have contributed great input into the synthesis report. We're happy to have Dr. Tao Liu today, who is an associate professor of urban and regional planning at Peking University in China. His research interests include migration, urbanization in China, urban and regional planning, urban land development and spatial analysis. He is the lead of the internal migration and urbanization in China project in the PEAK Urban Program. And we're also very happy and privileged to have Dr. ChengHe Guan today, who is an associate professor of urban science and policy at New York University, Shanghai. He is the founder of Shanghai Digital City Laboratory and is a core member of the Center for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence. He is interested in the changing urban geographical processes that shape cities, towns, and landscapes, and urban simulation, urban growth modeling, and spatial analysis. So we can see, actually, we have a really great combination of panelists today. One is really specialized in data science, and the other is focusing on more traditional ways of studying urban. Before we start our today's discussion, I would like to take some time to introduce the PEAK project and the PEAK and Peking University's work in this PEAK project, and the synthesis report that born out of it. This introduction is made on behalf of Professor Chang Chunfeng and Guangzhong Cao. Both are the co-PI on the China side. So I'll start to share the screen now to introduce the PEAK and the PKU's things. Here you go. Great. Can you see it clearly? Great. As I said before, this presentation is made on behalf of Chang Chunfeng and Guangzhong Cao, who are not able to be here today, unfortunately. So PEAK or PEAK Urban is a research project in which researchers from 5 leading academic institutions cooperated, which is funded by UK Research and Innovation. And those universities or academic institutions were the University of Oxford, Fit University in Medellin, Peking University in Beijing, China, and Africa Center for Cities in Cape Town, South Africa, and the Indian Institute for Human Settlement in Bangalore, India. So it's really an international collaborative project through which there are a lot of collaborations are born out. And we're really happy that we have the chance to kind of draw the insights from different countries, from different contexts, to see how the urban futures could be shaped in different localities and countries. So PEAK or PEAK or PEAK is an acronym of predict, emergence, adoption, and knowledge exchange. The PEAK approach helps urban actors to predict aspects of city life, understand the emergence of new development and change, adopt appropriate interventions, and facilitate knowledge exchange to support urban research and action. The approach was developed and applied in various cities, including many megacities in China, such as Beijing and Shenzhen. And the CCC report that we are discussing today summarizes some of the key insights that emerged from the research that was undertaken in China. Actually, the PEAK approach applies to the China's context really well, as China is fast changing, which requires a strong prediction of the future changes so that we can make advanced interventions and get preparations for the changes. And also because of the fast development, all these kind of trends like new migration patterns, new urban development are emerging from this fast changing context. And also because China is developed in a different context as compared to the Western countries, the state is both the market regulators and both the market regulator and market participator. And also we got a strong cultural identity among the Chinese society, which means that different policies that can be applied to the Western context may not be able to apply similarly to the Chinese context, which requires us to adopt these kind of policies and technologies to the specific needs of China's urbanization. And lastly, the knowledge exchange is also critical for understanding China's urbanization and urban changes as well, as we not only need to contribute to the Chinese experience to the overarching urban theories and urban practices, but also use this experience to kind of challenge the Western dominant discourse and narratives on the urban development. So actually the PEAK framework, I think, is really fitted into the Chinese urbanization process, urban study, and also inspired our work as well. The PKU in PEAK is actually constituted by 5 projects, which are led by 5 experts in their own areas. And the first project is megacity and metropolitan region development, which is led by Professor Huang Zhongcao at Peking University. And his focus is mainly on how these kind of megacities like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and megacity regions like the Pearl River Delta, Yangtze River Delta, and Jinjiangji region can be better managed and developed in the context of the fast-changing urban realities. And then the second project is led by our panelist today, which is Tao Liu's project on internal migration and urbanization. And he sees urbanization through the lens of people and migration and tries to understand migration. So tries to understand urbanization in terms of the migration process, as migration is highly intertwined with urbanization in the Chinese fast developing context. And the third project is led by Professor Feng Changchun in Peking University as well, on urban land use and housing. He's an expert on Chinese housing market and housing and land development. And in this project, he mainly investigates how the different types of housing are offered to the urban residents differently, and how can better policy, urban housing policy be designed to fit into to serve the changing urban realities in China. And the fourth project is led by Peng Junzhao, an expert in urban transportation, big data, and urban modeling. And his main interests in this project is on how the urban transportation system can interact with the land development net development in urban cities, such that the behaviors of the residents in traveling can be shaped by the interactions of the transport system and net development, and how the travel behavior is different between different groups in China, which results in some kind of transport inequalities among different groups. So that's the fourth project. The last one, but not the least one, is about population health, which is really an emerging critical issue in the Chinese context, as the population aging is accelerating in China, as well as Chinese people are the China population as a whole has entered a stage that cares about health, life quality, rather than care about the economic factor alone. So in this specific project, Professor Wang, also from the Peking University, investigates how the population health in China in different regions are shaped by different factors, and how different methods can be taken in different regions in China to raise not only the life expectancy, but also help residents in different parts of China to have better mental health and physical health as well. So that's briefly the PKU's projects in the PIC project, in the PIC overall PIC project. And these projects are taken in a very interesting context, which is China. Why it is interesting? It is because China is an extremely large country, which is the world's 5th largest country. And not only because of the size, but also because of the heterogeneity within China. In China, you can see on the coastal side, we got really nice warm weather and very fast developing regions. And on the western side, we got really harsh environments and also quite slow economic development. So it's really hard to kind of find another country in the world to have such a divergence, which makes China as a particularly interesting country to investigate different pathways to urbanization and different scenarios and urban futures as well. It is also interesting at this particular time because China's urbanization is transitioning from high speed to high quality. So after nearly 3 to 4 decades of fast urbanization, now China's urban population has accounted for net 62.5% of the total population. And also the economic growth has slowed down as well. And the country has also opted for a new development model, which focuses not simply on economic growth, also more on the balance between economy, society, and environment. So in this critical moment, we are quite intrigued by this kind of urban changes within this kind of new era. That's a specific context that we are doing all these 5 projects. So that specific context also makes the PEAK staff really fit into the urban research in China, as all these kind of changes are pushing us to ask what are the emerging trends in this transition period, and how to adopt new technologies and policies to help China to better transit into high quality growth, and also how to communicate knowledge with other parts of China, but with other parts of the world, including both more developed countries, which has already got a high quality growth, and also developing countries which are still experiencing high speed growth. So basically, China sits at the intersection between fast developing countries and more developed high quality countries. And this particular intersection point makes the knowledge exchange particularly important. And after all these projects, here leads to one really important output, which is our topic today. That is the local synthesis report on China's urban growth from quantity to quality. And this report basically synthesizes all the results from the 5 projects and have a really nice summary of our key ideas on the specific urban issues that China are now facing, which are sustainable cities, inclusive cities, emerging migration, governance, economic growth, and health well-being. And below this kind of titles, you can see some bullet points suggesting the topics that are involved in this report. So if you are interested in all these topics or interested in any of these, you can find a link to the report for further reading, which Anna should be putting out. And after this kind of synthesizing the results, we got some suggestions for helping China to transit better into the high quality growth, which are firstly, we should work across city government silos, as a lot of urban problems now in China actually ask a collaboration between different governmental departments, such as the water governance government, pollution governance government, as well as economic stuff. So that's the first suggestion. The second one is highly related to a system of systems thinking, which means that the urban system is comprised of so many different systems that are interlinking with each other. So to address one issue, we not need to address the issue per se, but to think about these issues' relations with other issues. So to identify the links and interfaces between systems, so we can get the key points that can address this issue, as well as get the stuff better solved. So the second suggestion. The third one is promote cross-sectoral knowledge exchange, which is quite obvious as contemporary urban issues, not only in China, but also in other countries, are quite complex, which involves different sectors, such as the economy sector, the society, and environment. So we should work across different sectors to generate knowledge to find solutions for urban problems. And the third is reforming planning philosophies, which is highly related to the China's transition to the high quality growth. Because previously the planning philosophy is more about command and control. So now the high quality growth might be more about fine-tuning and management of urban. So urban governance rather than urban government should have a higher stage in contemporary China's urbanization. And the third the next one is shift the focus of population policy. As mentioned in the report, that China's migration and population are changing into a new stage. So the focus of the population policy should be changed as well. And next one is adopt city-specific policies. That's because China is large and heterogeneous. So different places have different issues and problems, and we should tailor the policies to the city's specific demands as well. Last but not the least, to use the PEAC approach, as I have introduced repeatedly throughout the presentation, that PEAC approach really fits into the China context. And I believe it also fits into many contexts in fast urbanizing countries, which are quite similar to China as well. So that's basically the brief introduction of the PKU's role, as well as the report. And I'll stop talking for now. It's quite boring to hear me only speaking. And I'm so happy that we're going to have a conversation today with Tao and ChengHe on the report. So I'll stop sharing the screen now. Let me see. There you go. Great. Okay. So the first question, the first stop, I would like to invite Tao and ChengHe to talk a little bit about the work they have done in the PEAC project. I may mention a little bit in the previous introduction, but obviously you guys have a better knowledge on your own work than I do. So I would like to invite you to speak a few words on the work. Who would you like to? ChengHe, would you like to go first?
Okay, of course. How many minutes do I have? Should I give a brief introduction to the work I have done, or a long word?
It's up to you. Yeah, it's up to you.
Okay, I'll give a short word because I want Dr. Liu to participate in this conversation too. Thank you very much, Dr. Shi. As Dr. Shi mentioned, me and Professor Tao Liu also participate in the PEAK project. My current institution is NYU Shanghai, and then through the PEAK urban research, we actually able to establish a key laboratory. So it's a state level key lab under the Shanghai Science and Technology Committee. The full name is Shanghai Key Laboratory of Urban Design and Urban Science. So I mentioned this platform first before any of my research because this is actually a evidence showing how much we through the PEAK Urban project has achieved and have proved that international collaboration can help young scholars like me and Professor Liu Tao to establish ourselves and to get recognized by the state level science committees. So regarding PEAK urban research as well as the key lab, we call the acronym is LOUD because it's a lab of urban design and urban science. So our three main research directions, I'll say the first one is very much fit into, I'll say PEAK's P, it's related to urban growth modeling as well as low carbon city. The second one is very much related to the post-pandemic because throughout our PEAK research project, almost the second half are actually under pandemic impact. So our second research direction is the planning for post-pandemic cities. And then the third one is planning for the infrastructure of green and blue. So green means, parks, blue means water. So it's a combination of water and park. And in this project, we use a lot of big data. For example, mobile phone data. We also apply for, applied many type of tax data. In China, we use Weibo. In the United States, in Europe, we use Twitter data. So these are the three main research directions that related to our research at PEAK Urban, as well as the LOUD Key Lab.
Thank you, ChengHe. That's brilliant. That's really interesting and really reflects the PEAK as well as the prediction, as well as the emerging stuff. Great. How would you like to talk a little bit about your research and work?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shi and Professor Guan. My research on the project PEAK is focused on mainly on the migration and also started from the migration. Maybe about it's both at the regional level, it's the changing geography nationwide and also at the regional level, and also the evolving, the changing reasons or drivers for migration and the emergence of new modes of migration, such as the onward migration, the increasing return migration, and new migrants as followers, not migrant workers. And start from these migration studies, we also do some research on the implication of the changing migration patterns on for the urbanization, including the inclusive city, the provision of public services, and also some urban governance issues. And the third part of our research is about the urban planning and also the emerging spatial planning in the Chinese planning system. Or something about the planning research, which means I think the what does the new trends of migration and urbanization for the planning. It may cause some threats and challenges for urban development. The urban planning system must cope with these challenges. This is about some planning research, and also we participate in some practice of national and regional plannings. So this is three issues we deal with in this PEAK project. Okay. So,
great. Thank you, Tao. That's brilliant. That's really interesting. I would like to kind of follow up a question on ChengHe on the state lab key lab in your labs. That's quite interesting to me, as PEAK has helped you to establish this such a high level lab. So could you provide some more information on how PEAK has contributed to this establishment specifically?
Okay, regarding this, I had a full seminar at another event called International Association of China Planning. Actually, I share a lot of my experience, and we have a lot of conversations. I'll give a short version. So establishing a key lab in the traditional way requires very established scholars who can prove they can contribute significantly in an area which is a gap that current key urban lab do not cover. But for me, I came back from United States to China in 2019, so I have been only working here for 4 years, and our lab established last year. So basically, that means 3 years. We have to prove we were able to lead this key lab. So the most important reason we can establish is we have very strong link to international collaborators. So I can say more than I can to appreciate the collaboration through PEAK Lab with researchers from PKU, with researchers from IIHS, from Oxford, of course, and from our other two collaborators. One is EFIT from Colombia, and also from South Africa. So just demonstrating we have been working across continents with 5 international institutions is the first, I would say, it's the first key to open the first door. Once we are in the door, and then they let us to show, now you have proof that you can do international collaboration. You can bring, the international knowledge to urban research in China. You can also, share the urban research experience with international collaborators. Now, what you can do. So the second step is, again, related to the predictions, also the emergent knowledges. We actually had a lot of publications. I believe, Dr. Liu Tao also has plenty of publications in the last few years. So we actually proved we can publish on top journals in the field of urban planning. We also can provide interdisciplinary research among researchers. For example, when I work with Professor Michael Keith, we kind of bring in big data with sick data. Big data meaning, we are using mobile phone data. Sick data is the type of, ethnographical knowledge. So this is also another evidence that we presented. And last but not the least, the reason we were able to make this key lab happen is that we found the research gap through these international collaborations, and we were able to actually provide support for urban planning policy interventions during the pandemic. I can get into more details, but this is more like a nutshell to answer Dr. Shi's question.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I can see that international collaboration is a great facilitator for you to establish this lab. And I believe that Tao has also collaborated with international researchers through the PEAK project. So I would like to kind of ask, how is your experience in collaborating with someone outside China on Chinese issues? do you find any difficulties or insights or inspiring stuff when you do this kind of cross-national and cross-cultural collaborations?
Yeah, it's
Anyone?
really a challenge for us, for the PKU group, to collaborate internationally, actually. I think that you have mentioned that the China's urbanization has undergoing in a very different in context that is very different from the Western societies. We have very clear and clear impression on this issue. In terms of the migration issues I studied, the migration or the migrants, its definition is totally different in China and that with that in other countries. It does not defined by the moment from one place to another. It's about the institution. It's an institutional issue. It's defined by the two locations. The location people are living and working in, and the places they are registered. So maybe they have lived in Beijing in some cities for more than 10 years, 20 years, but they are still registered in another places. So they have been migrant workers or migrants for 2 decades in some cities. So migration is an institutional concept in China, but it's totally different in other countries. So the conversation between the China case and that in other countries are very difficult for us. Despite this, we also try to find some opportunity to link the two systems. Although the official statistics about the China's internal migration has been an institution-based one, but we have struggled to find some individual level census data or some other survey data to find the to redefine the migration and the migrants in the Chinese context, so that the group and the behavior redefined by our new data can be compared with those in other countries. So this is how we do the collaborative studies and also comparative studies between different societies. This is the most important collaboration between the PKU team and our Columbia colleagues. So this is a specific research collaboration. Another collaboration between us and other institutions maybe we have some PhD students who visit the Oxford University in their study. So we have sent 2 or 3 students there to Michael Case, Professor Case, and other professors in the Oxford University. I think it is a sustainable collaboration because they are much younger than ChengHe and me. So maybe more future collaborations are potential. So these 2 things maybe I want to share. And the last thing is about the pandemic. Actually, I think the collaboration between the PKU team and other teams has been affected very seriously by the pandemic. We did not go to the Columbia retreat and the retreat in Beijing is also was also conducted online. We tried to do it better than we expect, but the online system is different from the face-to-face communication, I think. So maybe we can do more in this aspect after the ending of the project. So that's what I want to share.
Great, great. ChengHe, do you have anything to add on this collaboration stuff, the challenges and inspirations from international collaboration on Chinese topics?
Okay, sure. Maybe I can talk about, of course, right after I returned, I collaborated with PKU. I would also consider this an international collaboration because even though I'm Chinese, but after leaving China for 20 years, when I came back, Professor Feng Changchun and Professor Cao Guangzhong actually gave me a big hand and helped me to not only establish myself, but also position myself into the right groups, into the right research directions. I think even though I did not work specifically on a migration project like Professor Liu Tao mentioned, but I did actually co-supervise a master's student with Michael Keys. And the student actually is from NYU Shanghai, graduated, and then went to Oxford, get a master's degree. And then Michael and we support him together. Michael gave him advice on how the anthropogenic perspective, and I gave him advice on big data perspective. I think this type of collaboration is actually help us not only to start this kind of research platform, but to actually make the platform more vibrant. So after this first collaboration, co-supervised this master student, now we are actually in the process of sending our postdocs to Oxford. So this is kind of a second platform that we established. And other than this, I want to mention one more thing about international collaboration. Since Professor Liu Tao said that they missed the Columbia field trip or the retreat, I actually made it, but I get stuck in there. It's the beginning of 2020, so I have to stay there for 2 months before I can actually return. So during that 2 months, both Professor Juan Carlos and Hilo actually gave me a lot of help. So not only I did not slow down, but we found a new topic to collaborate, and that paper was just recently published on environmental and planning B. So it's related to a water policy application and urban growth simulation in a city called Jiaxing in Zhejiang province in China.
Wow, congratulations on that. That's brilliant that you don't lose any time during your stay there. That's great to know. Thanks for that. And I can see that actually peer collaboration is not limited to publishing papers and research collaborations, but also nurturing the young scholars to let them to have the international scope such that they can be these kind of international scholars in the future, make more collaborations in the future as well. So not only the research per se, but also people are really important to the PEAK project, which is also an emphasis of the project as well. I think both of you have mentioned about the pandemic-related research, which is quite really like emerging from the context, like emerging post-pandemic urban management and urban futures, like ChengHe you have mentioned, and also the emerging migration related to the pandemic stuff. So do you want to talk a few more words on how the new urban crisis, the pandemic as a new crisis, has actually brought new research opportunities for you to look at or relook at China, China's urbanization and cities in China.
Okay, you want me to start? And then,
Sure.
Maybe Professor Liu can follow up. Maybe some of you have heard that during the pandemic, there's a special time period for 3 months in Shanghai. We have a complete city lockdown, citywide lockdown. Which is actually last spring 2022. So during this lockdown, we are actually experiencing a lot of new urban issues that emerging. For example, community, organizations are very important during this kind of city lockdown. So right after the lockdown, we are engaged with one research project. We collaborate with Shanghai Big Data Center, which is also a government agency, are helping to solve this pandemic and city lockdown issues. So starting of June 1st, every citizens, if you want to go out, who lives in Shanghai, need to take the COVID test. So there are 20,000 PCR test or COVID test booths distributed in Shanghai. So we said, we commented, that's the new urban infrastructure that's set in place for a short time period. It turns out those PCR booths only stayed there for about half a year, 6 months, a little shorter than 6 months. So we were able to use the data supported by Shanghai Big Data Center to study, if such an emergency happens, how we can first provide the most efficient way for all the citizens to get access to PCR tests or other type of service. Second, from the government perspective, how we can actually balance, how we can make the cost of such temporary urban infrastructure cost the least. So we are trying to come up with the balance. Of course, we use a lot of models and stuff to run this. But at the end of the day, we were able to provide important documents. In Chinese, we call 内参. It's basically a document that we write based on a report to government officials, to provide suggestions as an urban researcher, what we advise the policy interventions should be regarding urban issues. So this is one of the major contributions, I would say, as an urban researcher, as a peak urban researcher, that we contributed to the post-pandemic Shanghai urban plan.
Right. How do you want to add something on your research related to the pandemic stuff?
Okay. Our research on pandemic was concentrated mainly in the first year of the pandemic, and we have our research come to about 3 main conclusions, which may the first one is about our attitude to the migrants. Maybe we should distinguish the migrants and the everyday travelers. It seems and it learns very simple, but at the beginning of the pandemic, the spread of the virus, there are some discriminations to the migrants. It seems that they are migrating from one place to another. Maybe they are so they are blamed because they are seen as a traveler. So also have the great contribution to the spread of the virus. However, they are migrants from one place to another, but it does not mean that the traveler every day. Actually, the migrants often live in one place, in one city. They did not have many intercity travelers, and their intracity movement is also not so frequently as that of local people. So they are not the that should be distinguished from the real everyday movers, both intra and intercity. The latter are actually not migrants. They are businessmen who always traverse between cities and also within cities. So this is the first thing. Maybe we should not blame the migrants just for their movement between cities for only once. If we want to blame somebody, that should be the everyday travelers rather than the migrants. So this is the first conclusion. And the second one is that the most vulnerable cities are the large cities, extra large cities, rather than the cities that are paid the most attention when the pandemic was occurred in Wuhan, because at the beginning of the spread of the pandemic, the most scholarly and public attentions have been paid to small cities and rural areas surrounding Wuhan. However, we find that the most risky cities are actually large cities, such as Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen. They have the largest number of everyday travelers. So it means that when some new virus or a new public some virus or some new pandemic occurs, it must have the largest effect on the extra large cities. So this is the second. And the third conclusion is about the actions of different cities. Our research found that it is of great importance for all the cities to act together and simultaneously while facing similar crisis. Because if without these simultaneous actions, the pandemic might be rise here, down there, and then rise there, down here. So we can hardly control it for given the massive intercity communications every day. So the common action, the simultaneous actions among cities might be extremely important for controlling the pandemic or other crises. So this is the third point I want to say. So
that's quite fascinating. It's really revealing that how pandemic has actually revealed new areas of urban governance that requires future actions, which cannot be found if that pandemic had not occurred. And also it's really interesting to find ChengHe's collaboration with the Shanghai government on finding effective ways to distribute this kind of stores, PCR test stuff, which can also, I think, be used in the future urban crisis management, as now the city is facing great challenges and have such a high uncertainty that future crises might easily arise, and they can learn from experience from this pandemic as well. Great. So we are all talking about the pandemic stuff, and actually the topic today is about the high quality development in China. So I will turn to the topic now, which we still got 15 minutes to discuss about how the China's recent shift towards high quality development has affected the urban issues that you are looking at, such as infrastructure, green and blue stuff, and also migration.
I think these are all intertwined. I mean, even though we are focusing on post-pandemic or pandemic planning, it's very much related to the high quality, urban trend we are talking about. One thing I think that stand out is because of this pandemic research or the impact of pandemic, the high quality are very much related to urban health. So people start to notice not only the pandemic or the disease, there's other type of urban health that should brought people to attention. So after we did this infrastructure, the PCR boost investigation, we actually attracted attention from a foundation called Rockefeller Foundation. I think most of you probably have heard of it. So we had a discussion about we have 20,000 PCR booths. Now we're moving it away, but how can we use it toward the future, building a future high quality, a healthier city? So we started to collaborate with researchers, in the field of public health, in the field of particular type of medical focus, for example, cardiology. So we actually were able to bring urban research into the specific systems, especially the medical system. We are also relating our result to particular type of medical organizations. For example, in China, we have Ilianti. So it might be a foreign word for people who are not familiar with Chinese medical system, but basically, you need a referral system from a community clinic to go to a hospital, higher level hospital. In Chinese we call it the Sanjian hospital, but that means the first class or class 3, but actually the first class hospitals. So these are all kind of generated to address the high quality urban development focusing health. And in particular, when we were talking with the Rockefeller Foundation, they said these are the research they're interested to fund in the future. So through this kind of research, we were able to identify low mobility group, to identify the vulnerable communities that who need more help. As Professor Liu mentioned, there's a lot of issues regarding migrants at different scale of cities, small, large, medium, and they need to act together. I very much agree with that answer. And from our perspective, this is more of a regional urban network that we can build to better support these migrants or these low mobility or vulnerable groups. So I think this is probably our next step, to better utilize the post-pandemic urban infrastructure to convert or to combine them to provide better urban health management or monitoring systems, not only using the traditional way of signaling, but also using the city itself as a rehab, using the city itself as a way to make people's life better.
Great. That's great to hear that actually the pandemic has made people realize that urban health is an important issue, which has not been paid such a huge attention before, which also kind of signaling the transition into high quality growth, not only for the high level kind of policymakers, but also for the ordinary people are thinking about high quality life rather than simply earning money or making a living. Professor Tao, do you have any things to add on?
Yeah, I totally agree with Dr. Guan's point that the health or other needs of the as well-being aspects of the population, the people as lies in the center of the high quality development. I think in my viewpoint, maybe the most important aspect of the high quality development maybe the people centered or their demand oriented model of development. So my research about the migration and the population also focused on these issues. Maybe we should firstly know who are the people, who are them, where they are going, where will they be in the future, and what do they need. What they need maybe not only job opportunities, and maybe not all high income jobs. They also need better public services and urban welfares. For example, the better healthcare system, better education, and more inclusive society. And these are their new, their more diversified needs that the government and the society should provide, should meet their such needs. So the background of this changing has been the changing conversation of the migrants. As we know, China has a population of 376 million migrants, internal migrants, which is much larger than the total population of the United States. And I want to share another number, which was 226 million people. This is the number shown in the annual statistical system, which means the National Statistical Department reported that there were only about 200 million migrants. Actually, the latest census conducted in 2020 revealed that there are actually 370 million, which means about 150 million people are missed in the statistical system. The government even not aware of their existence, that do not know where they are. How can they serve them? So I want to share that there are many very basic issues to be studied in the migration field and urbanization also. So there are also many other problems to be dealt with for the high quality development, and there are also many very basic information that are missing and or misleading. So there are many research works needed for the development.
Great. So basically, I think your answer, your suggestion really echoes what ChengHe has said before, that is serving the people. Like you are actually trying to have better governance to serve, to find the right person, deliver the right service, and serving the people, and that's the core of the high quality development in the current conversation in China. So ChengHe's point is more like towards health system and how to build great infrastructure, how do you effectively deliver these services, and yours is more like how to find the right person, how to get the people, we know the people better. So actually, I think you two can build up strong collaboration in terms of the two processes which contribute to the high quality development as a whole. That's really, really brilliant. Great. So I'm fully aware about the time. So let us turn to the questions of our audience, which are quite active during the whole webinar. Thanks for your great questions. So okay, so I think the first question really also is something that I want to ask but do not have time to, is about your research translation into the policies and challenges in this translation. I think ChengHe has mentioned before about their collaboration with the government, which is a relatively direct engagement, just engagement directly with the government, such that their research can be a direct input into their policy makings. But what if you are not really working with the government and try to kind of push your research advice to the government level and to translate into policies? Do you have any kind of opportunities and challenges in doing that?
So other than the one I mentioned, we work directly with the government. That's a project, we are assigned as a key lab. That's our responsibility. But there's another occasion. It's related to the district level, planning policy making. We are located in Pudong New District. It's one of the districts in Shanghai. So we actually started a project about the usage of urban green space, urban parks in Pudong. And this is a project we use kind of big mobile phone data to understand, post-pandemic, how people utilize those urban parks, how they go there to relax, their activities. And then through that project, we were able to provide for the Pudong district government, more specifically, one of the divisions is called the Urban Development and Reform Commission. So that's one of the important commission overseeing a lot of urban planning policies. So through that project on urban parks, we were able to promote, we were able to suggest the government to continue on an even larger project. So the project is related to the digital transformation of citizens' life in Pudong district. So they're saying, if you have the technology to, study how people use the green space, why don't you, use these kind of digital infrastructure, digital technology to understand, and at the city level, at the district level, how people are, benefiting from this kind of digital techniques. So this is actually related to one of the things Professor Liu Tao mentioned. Where are these people? Where are the missing people? So through this project, we were able to identify, over 500,000 people that are actually not registered, either in the Hukou system or as a temporary worker in Pudong. We were finding there are much more people actually, at least they are the daytime residents in Pudong. They might go somewhere else, afterward. So, so this is just echo what Professor Liu Tao mentioned. So there's a way, we can do this. And then through this project, again, we were able to provide policy interventions. I guess this is not just, there's a policy, there's government you have to work with them. Sometimes it can go the other way around. You can have a really good project, and then through that project, you can then, use the result, use the outcome to convince the policymakers to, help, researchers to develop an even larger product. This is almost like a seed grant, right? You have a seed grant, even though it's not seed grant, and after you produce something, that actually can provide service, to the customers, or in this case, the commissioner from the Pudong Development and Reform Commission.
So actually, I can see the government also wants some inputs from research. So they want actually not only base their policies on their own minds, but also needs inputs from research, which provides us the opportunity to develop projects as well. Tao, do you want to add something on this translation of research into policies?
Okay. Actually, our group has participated in compiling some national level and local level plannings. For example, the well-known 5-year plan. It means the 14th national plan of economic and social development, and also the first round of national territorial special planning. So our participation in this planning process allow us to provide some policy recommendations for them to them. So the most memorable policy recommendations, including the first one is about the trend of urban shrinkage, so which is a hot topic in the China city studies, urban studies. However, we suggest we tell the policymakers that the shrinkage of Chinese cities is not a common or popular trend. Not now, and not in the near future, because although the total population has no longer growing, the population may be declining, but there are still massive population move from more rural areas to cities and towns. So there are more than 20 million people urbanized. They move from rural areas to urban areas. So this is a very large population. So they still have many needs for public service and housing, urban housing, and many aspects to. So the government should continue to provide the space for urban development. So this is the first thing. We cannot anticipate that the Chinese cities will no longer grow in the future, although the total population of the country is declining. So this is the first thing. And the second one is about the land quota system. China has a land quota system, which is similar to the land development rights, but it is determined by superior governments. The central government allocated the total land quota to different every province, and the province government allocated the quotas to different to prefectures, a top-down system. We recommend that the quota should be allocated to not to cities but to people. The more people, the more development rights, the more quota. And the people include not only the local people and also the migrants. These are the two principles. One is not allocated to the cities but to people. Or the second, who are the people? Not only the local people but also the migrants. So these two things maybe I think have the and have been accepted by the policymakers, I think. So they will be reflected. They have been and will continue to be reflected in the national level policies. So
great, thank you. I think it also kind of reflects on the previous mentioned people-centered growth, as now the net quota is also people-centered as well. Great, we still got a few questions and I'm fully aware of time. We've got two questions on collaboration, which is quite interesting. I will merge these two questions together. One is the question on collaborating with the West, which is now having a significant political tension with China. So the question is that how your collaboration experience has shed light on the possible collaborations despite this kind of political tension. So how this political tensions has been overcome by you guys in order to establish this collaboration. So that's on the collaboration with the West side. We've got a question from Dr. Kibutu, if I pronounce it right, which asks, do you have any collaboration plan with African universities? So one on the Western side, despite kind of political tensions, the other is on the developing countries, such as countries in Africa. you want?
I can take either one. Which one do you want me to answer?
You can take both or either. It's up to you.
Okay, I'll start from the Africa one. Peak Urban has actually the African collaborator in South Africa. But beyond that, we also very actively engaging with African urban planning. Right before the pandemic, I actually visited Accra in Ghana. So it's in West Africa. Countries speak English. The reason we go there is, the investigation of a lot of Chinese workers who are actually currently either working or living in the country. So this is part of related to the One Belt, One Road policy. This kind of, support is from the higher government level, to support, to provide researchers, enough opportunity to work with the locals. And of course, we want to extend this collaboration. A lot of these growing cities in Africa, especially related to the new town growth. We actually are writing a book about new towns across the world. And regarding the Western context, I think that's a great question. I think under the extreme, or political tensions, academic collaborations become even more important. So how we overcome this, I think the following two ways is how we did this. The first is to be actively engaged with the research partners, engage with NGOs, engage with foundations. We collaborate with Rockefeller Foundations. We have collaborations with a lot of NGOs, and then we also, through our special, I would say this is structure of the NYU system. Even though I'm in Shanghai, my PhD students, they're in New York. So these are the ties, we will never, let go. And then I'm also requested to, have integration semester to teach at NYU New York. So I guess these are one of the important things to actively engage. And the second is very much outcome oriented. We have to produce documents that can help both parties to solve issues that we are both interested in order to make this collaboration more sustainable. It's not one way or the other. We are learning from the West, or West learning from us. It's really the outcome that we produce collectively. That's my answer.
Okay, thank you. Tao, do you have anything to add?
My answer is quite similar to Dr. Guan. I think the Peak Urban program established, it is a very open mechanism, not only a platform, and also a mechanism for us to collaborate with our colleagues all over the world. Our collaboration have also found that the collaboration between the so-called global South and the global North is important. However, the South-South collaboration is also equally, if not more important than the South-North collaborations. So the colleagues from Africa universities are, of course, welcome. Actually, I used to have some collaboration with a young scholar in Ethiopia. Oh, yeah, it is a country. Ethiopia. Ethiopia. Yeah, we have some collaborations. Yeah. So, and yes, I also agree with Professor Guan that the political tensions actually make it even more important for our scholars to collaborate. Actually, I think the decline in the collaboration between the Chinese and Western scholars over the past years may be caused not mainly by the political tension, but by the pandemic, I think, because after the in the new context, the new policies, the international collaboration, many international collaborative funds funded by the Chinese government has also restarted. Actually, I am participating in planning in the application of international collaborative funding. So I think the opportunity will continue and also enlarged, I think. So,
thank you. Thanks. It's glad to hear that there's more collaborations both with the West and with Africa. I'll try to squeeze 2 questions as we got 10 minutes left. One is very interesting. How is the conversation of urbanization quality while accounting for hierarchical differences between Chinese cities? Are there different perceptions on quality, which means that for different cities, the idea of quality might be different. What's your opinion? I think that's quite an inspiring question, interesting question.
Okay, I can answer the question. So first of all, talking about the hierarchical urban, urban structure. So we have to understand 2 concepts. One concept is called Desakota. I think a lot of geographers actually are very familiar with this word. Is contrary to the dichotomy between urban and rural, a lot of the Chinese urban network are composed of larger, medium, and smaller cities. So we call this Desakota. Desakota is not the English word; it's the Indonesian word. It's describing from the urban center to the rural area. There are a lot of different changes. Sometimes, there are even denser urban frontier areas. And there's a lot of towns. They actually have more economic power than the city. So it's really hard to say, hard to apply the urban transect idea. If you're familiar with, the new urbanism ideas, it's really regarding, what are the what are the forces, the strengths of urbanization. So that's actually related to other concept, related to this hierarchical, urban quality development. So one is, the town and village enterprise. As I mentioned, a lot of these towns, they're very advanced, especially, for example, around the Shanghai area, through this kind of overspill of this foreign investment or some of these laborers that live in Shanghai. A lot of towns around Shanghai are actually very advanced. And then their GDP are, per capita GDP is actually very, very high. And then the second concept is actually the second policy that need to be related to this hierarchical urban quality network is related to the policies has been implemented in China. One policy is the feature small town policy. In Chinese, it's 特色小镇. So it started in the Zhejiang province and it has kind of applied to many towns in China. Of course, there are a lot of failures, but at the same time, it shows the shift of focusing solely on larger cities, but also actually focusing on smaller towns. And the other is the we call this the revitalizing the rural area. This may not be the perfect translation, but in Chinese is the 美丽乡村 project. So we are actually selecting hundreds and thousands of villages and very small towns, and to understand the urban form of this, and then to actually provide more social sensing technologies to help these towns to grow.
Yeah.
Tao, do you have anything to add?
I think Professor Guan has discussed this issue very intensively, and I want to add only one point. As long as people can freely move from one place to another, they can choose they have the right to choose the best, the most favorable place for themselves. The people will have their best well-being. So the high quality will be achieved at anywhere. So the high quality development is a regional, is a city issue. It is also a social and individual issues. So this is the point I want to add.
Great, thank you both for your great input. And I can see actually the high quality growth on the one hand has different meanings for towns, for rural areas, for cities. On the other, it is also deeply rooted in people who are heterogeneous within the country. So actually high quality stuff is not only varied by places, but also varied by people. I think that's great idea, inspiring, that can be used in the future to help China to achieve so-called high quality growth. Okay, we got, I think, a few time for last question. Okay, I think the sustainability issue have been raised by several audience. So would you like to address the one about one of the challenges to high quality development seems to be to balance it with the sustainable development? Could you please shed some light on this context of China, basically sustainable development within the Chinese context?
This is a very broad question, sustainability development. Maybe I will use a specific example that what we are looking at. Again, this is related to pandemic. During pandemic, there's a lot of things changes. The air quality actually improved. Of course, related to mobility, slows down, lowers, right? But after this pandemic, we start to investigate how urban heat islands are transforming as we are entering into this post-pandemic era. A lot of this planning policy, they do not have specific policies on how the formation of urban heat island are affecting people's life, are affecting high quality urban growth, are affecting the extension of urban growth boundaries. We are actually trying to relate these sustainability issues, related to climate change, related to other extreme weather conditions, to investigate, if we are actually planning a city with long-term sustainability, we have to adapt policies that what if the climate change actually means 1.5 degrees Celsius increase of global warming, that actually dramatically change people's health condition, dramatically change urban heat island issues in the planning of our current cities.
How do you have anything to add?
No, I don't have much to say on this issue. Sorry.
So it's fine. We still got 2 questions, but I'm afraid we do not have time for these 2. So I'll say, like, shall we have some closing comments from both of you if you want to add something about today's webinar and talk? Do you have any closing comments for today's webinar?
Okay, I can have a couple of sentences to close this webinar. Of course, I'm very honored to be able to speak here. So my comments is that I hope this becomes a platform, not the point where we put the close mark on the peak urban project. We hope this a new start, and all the urban researchers, all the peak urban researchers, and everyone attended this seminar or will be able to hear this webinar, will be able to establish new collaborations. There's a lot of great questions. We won't be able to address all of those, but the reason we provide such a platform at PKU, at NYU Shanghai, is to provide opportunities for collaborations on urban issues, especially related to China, and all the researchers outside China who want to do China research or China related projects.
How do you have anything to close today's webinar. Closing comments.
Okay, I just want to thank you, the audience, and also I want to use this opportunity to thank Professor Michael Case and our colleagues from from the UK, from South Africa, India, and Colombia to have this chance to collaborate and communicate with each other. And secondly, I also want to expand our collaboration with colleagues and also young scholars and also students from all over the globe in the future. So contact me if you want to have some kind of more collaboration with our group. So thank you.
Great, thank you both. Thank you so much. I think today we have discussed a lot of issues, both some are related to collaborations, which are really open to future collaborations as well, both from the West and from Africa. For one audience that experienced this interest, feel free to contact us. And also we also talk about some policy translations about the great research we have done in PIC has translated into this kind of policy making, both at very local level, like community level, but also at a district level. And we also talked about the pandemic related new research, and which really reveals a systems approach, as from a single pandemic that we can see how it inspires us to think about urban governance, about people's demands, about urban health, about the sustainability as well. So actually our systems are so interrelated, interconnected with each other, that we can see it needs a PEAC approach to see them and address them. And last but not the least, we have also talked about the high quality growth and stuff in China, which has been revealed to have a very diverse meaning rather than a simple single meaning. So we are going to we highly encourage future research on this aspect as well. So for those of you who are interested in diving further into this kind of topics about understanding urban, or how from leveraging the experiences of a global network, could you develop your own methods and frames to view, interpret, and define urban changes in your local geographies and contexts. We think the Shaping Urban Futures course is an open it's a great course for all of you, and it's open to enrollments on Coursera and the edX. And Tao, ChengHe, and I are joined by a host of other faculty members from across 5 universities around the globe in this self-paced course, which we believe will enable learners to imagine how they can make a difference to the future cities. And you should find the link to the online course on the chat box window. Now, I think Anna has sent it a few minutes ago. Now he sent it again. And I would like to thank Tao and ChengHe and our audience for their participation and contribution to the seminar. And I wish you have a very pleasant rest of the day. And it's been a really great pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with Tao and ChengHe. And thank you so much for your time and your contribution. And bye for now. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.